let's talk about a very simple formula around core concepts and principles for leaders. And here's what I'm going to encourage. And when I say leaders, this may be for the owner. This may be for a team lead. This may be for an operations manager. But for the leadership, whether you're the owner or not the owner, I'm telling you right now that I do believe with all my heart that whoever owns the company does need to own a little bit of responsibility that, first of all, the organization does have some core concepts and principles that are the core foundation and anchor that everybody can always go back to. They need to be freakishly practical so that they can be applied in everything that you do all day long. I don't care whether you're serving a customer. I don't care if you're dealing with each other. I don't care if you're developing systems. I don't care if you're developing your message for marketing. The fact is what is the core foundation and principles that do this? Inform everything. Everything is filtered through and everything is audited against. I'm going to say those three again. I'm going to ask Chrissy to put those on the screen. Is for us, you already know, so I'm going to give you an example what that looks like for us, the 5x5. The 5x5 you're going to hear throughout this course a number of times. But the 5x5 is that everything that we do is scalable, duplicatable, freakishly predictable, effective, and efficient. And everything that we do creates for us and everybody that we interact with peace, contentment, and joy, and it's fully informed by gratitude and compassion. Okay? So now let me go back to those three that I just said. Everything that we do is informed by, filtered through, and audited against. Okay? Informed by, filtered through, and audited against. Now, I told you I was going to give you a formula today. None of that is a formula. Okay? Those are just facts, okay, from my point of view. Here's a formula that I'm going to encourage you to do. And don't assume that you take this formula and that you learn it today and that you're fully embodied it by the end of the day or by tomorrow or by next week or by even the end of the year, okay? This is a journey that does not end, okay? Now, here's that formula. Number one, have. It's the word have. It's that simple. Have core concepts, principles. Now for you, you know that mine's the 5x5. Hardcore. I can use that 5x5 in both my personal and professional life. If you ask my wife, she knows the 5x5, okay? Now, here's the deal is, I wrote down a few. Yours might be core concepts and principles. It might be core values. It might be your mission, vision, value. It might be your value proposition. It might be a number of other things. I'm not going to tell you that it needs to be my 5x5. I'm not going to tell you that it needs to be a core concept and principle. I'm not going to tell you it needs to be a mission, vision, value. Okay? That's a larger discussion, and I can go into each and every one of those. Okay? And some organization, or your why, such as in Simon Sinek, know your why. The why, how, what. Okay? Maybe that's it. But here's the deal is, you need to first have. Number two, you need to practice. This is the formula. Think of this as a timeline. You're going to start with have. Then you're going to move over and it's going to be about application. Repetitious repetition over long periods of time. It's not that you've applied these things. It is about application, okay? But it's not just application one time. It's not just application a dozen times. It's not application over a month. It's application non-stop over long term. And that's going to take you to the third part of the timeline. Have, apply, or repetition, whatever you want to say there. And then from there, embody. We're at a point, and I'm going to use myself as an example. So think of this in your terms. I'm not doing this to talk about me. I'm doing this to give you something that you can grab onto as an example so you can figure out, what does this look like for me? What does this look like for our organization? This has nothing to do with Cultivate Wins, nothing to do with David Breckheimer, okay? This is strictly an example, but this is about you and about you figuring out what this either looks like or could look like for you. Have, apply, embody. Have, apply, embody. Have, apply, embody. So what does that look like in real time for me? The 5x5, when it talks about peace, contentment, joy, gratitude, compassion, those that know me through and through will tell you I am the embodiment of those things. Cultivate Wins in the way we work and what we do embodies those, and nobody questions it. We embody it. We don't embody it by accident. Now, we actually at this point embody it even without thinking about it. But here's the thing is, we could do it without thinking about it, and we think about it. Both worlds, we embody it. Okay? When we are developing a system, we are thinking about it because we're auditing, where everything's informed by, filtered through, and audited against that 5x5. Okay? But once we've built something and we audit it from time to time and everything else like that, when we work in our natural state without thinking, those are the principles that we're working off of in a very automatic basis at this point. Now, does that come overnight? Not even close. It is 2022. I'm going to be 51 years old this year, okay? 51 years old this year. Those 5 started to develop when I was 19. That's over 30 years. That's about 32 years, I believe it is, if I'm doing my math right. Okay? Yeah, I embody those things at this point. That's not a pat on my back. That's just a fact. So, and here's the other thing. This is key to me. So ask yourself this. Again, this is not about me, not about Cultivate Wins, not about my core concepts and principles in any way, shape, or form. This is as an example so that you can ask yourself this next question is, as far as those core concepts and principles, how freakishly practical are they? So for us, the 5x5 isn't just powerful because we like those core concepts and principles. Those core concepts and principles from our perspective at this point are kind of over the top, just practical. Are your core concepts and principles, do they drastically push you? Which they might at the beginning, okay? But I'm going to be honest. Can you have core concepts and principles that you are crazy proud of? You're going to have them. You will apply them over and over and over and over. It's about that application over long periods of time. Not a couple times, not a dozen times, not a dozen months. Over long term, that you become the embodiment of them. At this point, we look at the 5x5, and if I look at any of those technically 10 core concepts and principles, they are so over the top practical to me. It confuses me, literally at this point. It confuses me at this point to think in any other way other than those, because why would I want to develop something that's not scalable and duplicatable? That just confuses me. Why would I even allow that? That doesn't make sense to me. So my core concepts and principles for me personally are almost over the top, ridiculously practical. So why am I using me as an example? Is just because of this. I want you to hear how I even think about my core concepts and principles at this point once we're at the point of embodiment. They're not just there on a pedestal. They're not just there on a website for marketing. They're not just there so I can coach and teach my people. We are literally the embodiment of those through and through, and to think any other way is hard for us because we're at the point that we think that way literally on an automatic basis, which comes over time and it comes through repetition. But the other thing is, not only do we think about them automatically, when we're purposeful about thinking about them, if we think outside of those, something just doesn't feel right. It literally doesn't feel right. It's just more practical for us to go, well, wouldn't that make more sense if we did it in a way that was scalable, duplicatable? These are so practical at this point, it's hard for us to do anything that does not live up to those standards. So this video is about core, I labeled it, I'm reading it right now, is core principles formula, have, practice, and embody. Have, practice, and embody. In parentheses, you could have, apply, and embody. Okay? Hope that helps you guys. But that's literally from a leadership perspective. Everything I just talked about is non-negotiable. And if you don't have that in you to develop that, that's maybe where you come in as a leader and you help guide your team and you find the people on your team that have the desire to help get you to where you need to be with this, or maybe you need coaching, maybe you need a community, maybe you need to read a bunch more books around these types of things, or get more teaching and do more lessons around this. Because I'm telling you, to just say this is not an important part is not an option. Not if you're going to be playing leadership at the highest level. Is you need to have core concepts and principles that every time you talk to someone, they know where you're coming from, because what you're coming from is, I'll say it again, is informed by, filtered through, and can be audited against whatever those core concepts and principles are. Okay? Hope that helps you guys, but from a leadership perspective, that's important. And when you talk to your people and you're the leader and they can't literally translate everything you're seeing being filtered through, informed by, and audited against those core concepts and principles, you lack clarity for them. That's automatic clarity if they can't help but see how that's informed by, filtered through, and audited against your core concepts and principles. Leadership. All right, guys, let's move on.